Kaman Malawatch and Rashir Fleming are doing a lot of things on the G League level. Let's kind of break down a little bit of what we've been seeing from them the last couple of weeks. All right, let's go ahead and start first with looking at a couple of offensive plays from Rashir Fleming. That's the side of the ball that I feel most of his growth will be needed and be seen and be kind of felt more before anything else. So looking at him on the offensive end, we're going to see him here. And if you watch my kind of my post-draft assessments of his game and just kind of watching some of his college film, I talked a lot about his potential as a screener, sometimes for who I kind of anticipate teams defending him with early on in his career when he's on the offensive side of the ball, but just generally speaking in terms of the functionality and the advantages that he can create both for the ball handler on the ball by flipping matchups, but also to be able to get himself downhill. So we'll see that in both of these reps here. Start first looking here on the court with the Valley Suns, paying close attention to exactly all of this space right here that they have just completely unaccounted for. All of this real estate. There's not a single offensive or defensive player where you see all of this space that I have kind of marked out. So as you see Rashir Fleming here coming into the play, we want to pay close attention to the angle of his screen. So the angle of it is not where his shoulders are perpendicular to the sideline, or if you will, he's a lot more on an angle to where he's a little bit more corner to corner than he is. And because of him being able to get into that hip pocket of the on-ball defender and the guard coming off of that screen, being able to engage his man for even just a half second to the point where his matchup's back was completely turned to him for a moment, that opens up the pocket pass. And again, because of all of this real estate being unaccounted for the Valley Suns on offense, so because of that, there's no defenders there. The role is there. If he sets a good screen, he gives himself an opportunity to make a play, and that's exactly what he does there, finishing through the contact 2+1. And then the next one, not going to be the exact same play, but it's going to be a very similar setup where we see the Suns doing a good job of creating space. You got this guard here starting on the elbow in horns, 45 cutting through, and what that's doing is now they have flat spacing. So that means that there's no help that they have to worry about coming from the nail. It's going to be essentially what they're creating, an organic 2 versus 2 with all of this real estate for these two offensive players to work against these two defensive players. So job well done in the presentation part for the Suns. We get back to the screen angles for him. He's not screening on the shoulder of these guys that are guarding the ball. He's screening that kind of back hip pocket. If you imagine where the pocket on some overalls or some jeans would be for someone that's wearing a pair, you can kind of imagine that's what he's screening as a target as far as contact goes. And what that does in terms of forcing this guy to have to work that much harder to potentially navigate that screen, or even just deter him being able to do so for half a second, forcing his matchup to either be engaged or to trigger a switch. This time it's going to be a switch that's triggered. And because of the switch that's triggered and his screening angle, that leverage that he has in terms of getting downhill, there's nothing that this defender can do about that. That's Ty Washington Jr. for anybody who recognizes him from last season. But again, going back to the start of the play, because this guy that was here in horns is now here, his defender is all the way under the basket instead of being right here at the nail or in the middle of the floor. So that means if Rasheer wins on the screen angle and getting downhill and holding that leverage and the pass is on time, this play is indefensible. And because of that and the timing and the cadence of everything, you even get a shake-up here from the corner to remove the kind of low man here in this situation. He's caught in limbo. He's not in position to do anything to deter Rasheer from catching his pass. Great timing on the pass, and he gets a very easy dunk, very easy too, simply off of setting a good screen and their process in the opening space being really good for him. And then we get to this next one for him, again on offense. There's going to see a little bit of an Iverson cut, if you will. He's just kind of cutting over the top of things, and I want to pause it at this point right here because I think this is something that he's going to continue to see a lot of as he gets to the NBA level. And that's if he's not having someone cross-matched on him, guys are going to be using him as a shift player. So teammates or opposing teams are going to be looking to kind of show a little bit of help off of him and kind of live with him taking shots at times until his percentages show that he's not someone that can be left unattended. So because of that, we see them getting into pick and roll. Ty Washington Jr. is again guarding Rashir Fleming. He's hanging out in this kind of open gap to aid his teammates on the ball as you see the Suns coming off of a little bit of pick and roll. As that happens, after you saw Rashir Fleming get into the kind of Iverson cut, he initially stops here As he sees that Ty is sitting in the gap and he's completely unaccounted for at this moment, he's just going to continue to kind of drift or sink into this corner, create more space between where he is and where his matchup is. And now it just comes back to the reps that I've kind of documented him getting in terms of his corner threes. Seeing it to the corner, so it's subtle movement. It's not a traditional catch and shoot where his feet are standing still. So your base has to be very good, and your mechanics going into your release have to be sharp as well. A wide open opportunity, so you pause it there. He talked to me earlier in the season about mechanic-wise wanting to be more sharp with his base. Not too wide of a base, but it's also not too narrow, so he's on balance. And then the last part he spoke to is not wanting to have the ball carry over to his right side before going up into his shot. He wanted it to be a more fluid south to north motion, and that's exactly what we see here as I bring it back a little bit, and you can just watch him do it in real time. You can see his mechanics improving. You can see the rhythm and the cadence with it improving. That's a good-looking play, and a great job doing it off a subtle movement. Now we get to the Malawatch side of the offense, and if you watch his post-draft assessments from me from that film session back in, I think it was in July at this point, actually. Talked a lot about him and his screen and angles and him also understanding of how to hit guys and hold the screen to create an advantage on the ball and how that would play into the ball handler as well as himself being able to receive the advantage. So this first rep naturally is him setting the screen, super high up the floor, does a really good job with the angle of this, inviting his ball handler to get into this kind of pocket of the floor. We'll get to that part in a moment. But what I want to pay close attention to with Malawatch on this play is that as he sets the screen, look at how he really does a good job of getting into the kind of navigation angle of the person that's guarding the ball. And ultimately, the space that concedes for the person that is handling the basketball, his teammate here, to kind of get into this pull-up pocket. The big here, guarding Maluach, doesn't want to get too far north of the three-point line. He's not as comfortable. So what that entails is because he sets that good screen, it gives the guard a pull-up pocket. Imagine this guard is Kobe Bryant, Devin Booker, Grayson Allen, Colin Gillespie, even a little bit of Royce O'Neal, Jalen Green. If these guards are coming off of great screens being set from him up top and giving them opportunity to engage the big or potentially get into these pull-up pockets, that's the wheelhouse that they all want to be in. That's exactly what happens here. His teammate gets a nice screen assist from Kaman Malawatch, doing a good job with the details there. And naturally, on the same topic of screen setting, we get back to this very next one. It's a little bit more of the same. This time it's going to be Malawatch benefiting from setting a great screen. So initially, you see where he wants to set this screen. Communication from the defense has him ultimately need to flip the angle because of how they decide to guard the screen, wanting to send the ball handler to his left hand rather than to his right. They call this weak coverage. So to counter the weak coverage and them kind of trying to funnel him that direction, what Malawatch does is flip the angle of his screen. And when he does that, that allows for not just ball to get downhill, but look at where Malawatch is and how he completely crushes Ty Washington as he tries to navigate this. That's exactly what you want to see. Not doing enough to get an offensive foul, but doing more than enough to stagnate his screen navigation. Forces the opposing big to be engaged, which ultimately gets a late switch. And when you get that late switch as a result from the work that you did to set the screen, you reap the benefits on the backside. So now we see Malawatch get into the roll. Ball has now completely engaged the opposing center. That means that point guard Ty Washington Jr. now has to get back to guard Malawatch, and that's not a matchup that a defense is typically going to want. So a great job again on the baseline from the Suns of kind of manipulating the space so that Malawatch can get into this post-up. Timing on the pass is perfect. Ty has absolutely no chance of guarding Malawatch here on the block. And as I still frame it here, you can see him also doing a great job of sealing with impact and ultimately creates that leverage for a wide open catch like a receiver would on a back shoulder fade. And that's an easy two for him. All again deriving from the great screen angle and him holding that screen to trigger that switch. And then he reaps the benefits on the back end. And then I like this rep here. So this is going to be Malawatch again on offense. Notice where he is, though. He is all the way in the corner on the weak side of where action is. You got all of these Suns players here on this side. You got Malawatch by himself in the corner over there. He can space it. We'll get to his three-point shooting in a little bit. But what I want to pay attention to is the flow into it. He doesn't always have to be someone that's setting screens or setting dribble handoffs for guys. He can be a guy that spaces it and gets into different types of actions from there because he is capable with the ball in his hands and putting the ball on the deck a little bit. So because of that, and I kind of give a little bit of what's coming into this play, they get into a little bit of rifle action with him. So him being off the ball and on the weak side of the floor, he's going to receive this kind of skip pass here. And what that skip pass initially wants is for him to be able to get into an uphill dribble handoff with this guard right here as he kind of loops around and then wants to flow downhill. So you see them do a good job with the presentation part there. That's denied well by this defender right here. So the handoff is not there. Good read from Malawatch. If he was really, really saucy and he might get there at some point, he might potentially be able to throw one of those kind of between the leg passes like we've seen Oso Ighodaro do and other bigs that can pass the ball well, but not quite there yet. Playing it safe, simply just gets it back to his guard. And what they've done now because of the action that they've run, it's again like we talked about on the rep with Rashir Fleming and his screens being set. It's now going to ultimately be flat spacing, and it's going to be these two offensive players working in a natural 2 versus 2 above the free throw line with no other extra defenders committed to the primary action. That's what you want. The Suns get into that. You see Malawatch do a good job with the screen that's set, allows for the guard to come off and kind of get down and engage the opposing big. But what that's doing for Malawatch, he has the option to roll. Obviously, if he rolls right here on this angle, the pocket pass is there. He can get hit over the top before this defender can get in there as well. The other option is, because he's versatile, the pick and pop. And if he pops, there's not going to be, because they're playing in a natural 2 versus 2, and this big is engaged, there's not going to be anybody else that's able to come over into this pocket of the floor and contest the shot truly, unless this defender comes there, which naturally domino effect opens up Rashir Fleming for a corner 3 where he's at home. So Malawatch gets into the pop, and there's no one that he really is even seeing between his vision, between where he catches it and where he's looking at in terms of the back of the basket. Doesn't even hesitate. The mechanics are fluid, and you see him knock down a rhythm 3 off of the pop. That's what you want to see from him on offense, getting some versatility out of his usage and knocking down shots in addition to getting into rolls and setting good screens to be in an advantage-creating situation time and time again. Now we're getting to the defensive side with both him and Rashir Fleming. We're going to start with Rasheer. Locate him here. He's off the ball initially, just kind of showing in the gap some. Ultimately going to see a screen set for his man to come off of this dribble handoff here up top. Watch his screen navigation and watch it closely with me here. So as we see Rasheer get to load up to navigate the screen, that's a smart under. You can take the fastest route there to meet your matchup on the other side of the screen so that you can stay neutral or even in potential advantage in your defensive screen navigation. So you see him get back into the ball. Now we want to watch closely with what he's doing when he gets onto the ball as his matchup gets it. So it gets a little bit of a pitch. So it's not a traditional dribble handoff. It's kind of a throw, and then it gets into the screen part of it. Job well done on the first screen. Fastest route just going under to meet his matchup on the other side. Watch what he does with this screen and how he blows up the play with how he slides, goes completely untouched. You can see a better screen set, but because he's so attached to the hip of his matchup, you really can't set that screen without it being an offensive foul. I imagine that's why the screener got out of there a little bit quicker than actually making contact. So job well done from Rasheer. And now it's about just guarding your yard and being solid with being on the basketball. To which he ends up getting a nice little deflection here on the poke. You see his wingspan play into the play here on the first kind of deflection to get it off of the leg, blow up the play again. And now I want to pay close attention to what's happening here on the backside. This is what makes him unique. He gets the poke away after navigating 2 screens, then is the first to the floor, and you can see his wingspan as I have it paused here. Just appreciate the kind of intention, the urgency he's playing with. First to the floor, gets to the ball before his matchup can, ends up stealing the possession away for the Valley Suns, and then also wins the 50-50 ball after that. That's the type of multiple efforts I think he's more than capable of on a possession-by-possession basis. It's just a matter of when, not if for him. And speaking to the win part, we're going to see him off the ball. I think this is another part of his game defensively that's going to translate very well to the NBA level. He makes solid decisions off the ball. You see the screen set up top, gets 2 to the basketball. He's the low man, so he's going to be responsible for the roller if he needs to. This is where discernment comes into place. Do you want to overreact here? And now that leads to your matchup being able to lift into an open catch and shoot 3. Or do you want to do a solid job of just kind of playing 2 in space and kind of waiting for a decision to be made on the basketball before fully committing and kind of giving yourself an opportunity to stay in the advantage on defense? He does a great job of not overcommitting, ultimately allows for his matchup, his teammates to kind of get back into where they want to be. And now he's able to kind of play in the closeout. But because he's so early in his position for help, it's a one-way closeout versus him have to pinch in to be the low man and then get into this closeout, which would be what's called a 2-way closeout. Instead, because he's there early, he's just into a one-way closeout, and now you start to see his athleticism on display. gets to close out, run his man off the three-point line, very on balance to be able to switch positions and go a complete different direction. This is one of the hardest things to do defensively is play in closeouts and still contain the basketball on a drive. That's exactly what he does. No advantage created, and now it's about what the Suns are able to do after that. They end up conceding essentially what's going to be an extra possession because they turn it over, and this is where he's going to ultimately finish it off. Again, discernment, not overreacting to where the ball is in respect to where his matchup is and what he wants to do. So he's playing two here because they're in defensive disadvantage because a couple of Suns guys are going that way after the turnover on the fast break. Not overreacting, he's just being very solid, a very calming presence. And because of that, he's not only able to stop the initial drive, but he's also able to get a deflection in a situation where he honestly had no business getting a touch on this pass that was going to the corner for Ty Washington Jr. Again, the multiple efforts of Rashir Fleming, very good with his instincts defensively, also very disciplined and not overreacting too often to concede a new advantage as he tried to take away something else that our offense is working to create. And now we get to the Maluach part of the defensive side of the film session. Want to pay close attention to him in drop coverage. So I bring it back just a little bit. We see him obviously here doing a good job in his back pedal. I want to pay close attention to this part of it. We talked about this in his post-draft kind of assessments, being able to impact the basketball and drop coverage. So not just getting back after a screen is set and kind of going through the motions, but impacting the basketball. You see a little bit of a jab back there as I take it back and you see him just a little something to give the ball handler, something to think about, all ultimately trying to buy time for his teammate who's committed to the ball. It's his job to find a way to get back into it, just trying to break that rhythm and that timing up there. Job well done from him there. You see another one there that really impacts the basketball, that really allows for ball to get back onto the ball, which should naturally, because his teammate is back attached to the ball, allow for him to get back to this point. As you see his matchup kind of relocating and popping back to the three-point line. He hangs around just a little bit too long, and that allows for his matchup to get a wide open catch and shoot three, and he tries to give him a little bit of a cornet, one of those contests from significantly far away from the ball. I would like to see him be a little bit pinched in more of once he does his job in drop coverage of impacting the basketball to the extent where Damian Ball is now able to get back onto the ball because of this stunt right here at the ball, that jab at. I would like to see him maybe give one more stunt here and get back, or just outright get back so that they can kind of keep their defensive shell intact and not give them a get out of jail for free card. Concedes great shot quality there. Just a very little thing. I would like to see him be a little better with guarding those bigs that can kind of pop and shoot the threes. And then we get to this last one. It's again going to be Malawatch flying up on the defensive end, this time getting up to the level of the screen. So we take it back just a little bit so you see what I'm getting at. Flies up out of his drop, gets up to the level of where the screen is ultimately going to take place right there, boom. And now he's going to end up in kind of a lateral or a flat hedge, not a full-on blitz, but because the guard tries to kind of turn the corner a little bit, he gets engaged. So they end up putting two to the ball, terminating his dribble. Look at the ferocity. Look at the activity from Malawatch. His ability to impact the ball is very important defensively, and him being able to defend in these situations and doing so without fouling. Only 4 fouls over his last 3 games played is very good for the Suns. And then he's able to kind of rotate back, get back into his matchup. They keep their shell intact. He ends up getting a good box out on another big. The Suns are able to get a stop. Just a lot of the little things, the disciplines, the skill development from both him and Rashir Fleming have been on display for tape. Hope you enjoyed that. And they're making some good strides in terms of their game-to-game sustainability and what will translate to the NBA level.